Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for joining me today and welcome to another episode of Chaos Roundup for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Now this week we've got two events to have a look at, which will be the new Abyss Chaos and the Lost Chapter for Vayne. Now I actually did the Abyss Chaos a little bit later than I was supposed to, just so that I could use a particular character, and it's not Vayne, it's actually Paladin Cecil, but you know, with using Paladin Cecil for both clears was such great fun, and I know I've gone on a lot about him this week when it came to videos and streams and all sorts of things like that, but I wanted to showcase just why I think he's so underrated, and I've used him in two very different team compositions, both of which worked really well. So if you're interested in seeing how I used Paladin Cecil and the other characters within the party compositions for both of these Chaos events, and there is nary an Aranea in sight I might add, then stay tuned and keep on watching. As always, don't forget to check out all the social media links in the description box below, including Twitch, Discord, Twitter, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm actually very thankful for Twitch recently, because some of you guys have been extremely supportive in the fact that I've been streaming quite so much recently, whether it be Opera Omnia or War of the Visions or other things that I've been sort of toying around with, experimenting with. So a massive thank you to you guys just for joining in with that, and I really hope that more of you will turn up and come and watch me play some fun games. And of course, don't forget to check out my Patreon page as well. If you would like to investigate how these bespoke title cards are made, you can get one made just for you to be featured at the end of all of my videos. And as usual, I give a shout out to a random patron during every video as a massive sign of appreciation for each and every one of you that decides to sign up to it. And this time around, it's going to be Mark. So thank you ever so much for joining my Patreon. I appreciate it more than you could possibly know in this climate and how things are in the world right now, particularly for myself and my own sort of situation. So honestly, thank you very much for that. And of course, don't forget to check out all of the other Opera Omnia content creators who appreciate your support just as much as me. So we're going to start here with the Abyss Chaos, and as you can see here, I actually decided to use Paladin Cecil for this, mainly so that I could show off Paladin Cecil, but I actually want to make a point of the fact that you don't have to do an event the day it comes out. You can wait. I waited until today to do this event so that I could use a character I was really looking forward to, and equally, Vayne would have been pretty good for this as well, but I decided to go with an all-defense powerhouse because of the restrictions on different things within the event itself. So their attack and speed is raised, your max bravery and attack is reduced. I went with defensive but aura-based powerhouses so that basically I just couldn't take damage or die in any way, and this team worked out to be very strong, which is Paladin Cecil, Zack and Rosa. Now the thing to bear in mind with this particular event is that there's a lot of resistances coming up, and because of the fact that you can't use sword units, it kind of presents a situation where it wants you to use magic on a lot of these characters, and a lot of elemental resistances come up as well because of the behemoth during the third wave. But the first wave, I chose to use Paladin Cecil in particular because of his ability to enchant and imperil Holy. Now, the enemies are already weak to Holy, which is really handy, so you can make sure that Paladin Cecil is doing a very large amount of damage very quickly, but obviously Rosa and Zack will be doing less damage because they are not Holy imbued. They're just, they're just ranged attackers or melee attackers up until, of course, they use their EXs. So Zack is doing crazy amounts of damage with Apocalypse, and he's doing enough damage, thanks to the auras from Cecil and Rosa, from using just his regular skills. He's dealing like 5,000 damage a hit, which is enough for him to be able to break his thresholds and be able to keep his bravery up during my opponent's attacks. And then because Rosa can also boost max bravery up, and then so can Cecil, having all of these auras and buffs makes it so that the various mitigations from the event itself actually don't affect you all that badly. And because Zack is taking all the hits and he's warding all the damage off the other two, who are both capable of batterying and healing each other and him, and then once you have the Holy sort of enchant across the party alongside the Imperil, I chose to use one lot of it during the first wave because I wanted to try and get through it as much as possible, and all your characters are just doing a great amount of damage. Cecil's Luminous Blast HP attack is also absolutely fantastic. Bear in mind that your attack is reduced and their defenses are up and things like that. And he's still dealing 7 lots of 5,000 damage per hit and dealing splash damage. So his longevity is absolutely fantastic. He does absolutely crazy things in this particular fight just because he brings the enchant in peril so that you're not having to worry quite so much about which characters you bring. And I'll get to why you could bring characters like Lulu in place of him for exactly the same reason, or Onion Knight. But honestly, having an enchant impaler in your party for this particular sort of Abyss Chaos is actually really helpful. Rosa was mostly there to provide a little bit of Brave Overflow, to provide obviously all the nice, amazing auras that she provides. She's also got, the Divine Blast can actually do quite a lot, because once you've got all these auras and attack-based things, while you've got all 3 of these guys going, you could have even brought Vayne instead of Zack, because the battery is so potent and because, Vayne increases everyone's attack even further from his own auras. You could replace it that way, and I did think about doing that, but I thought the thing to remember with Abyss is there's no HP requirement, there's no turn count, which is a godsend, and there's nothing you have to worry about in that particular way. So all you have to worry about is the score. So just taking whoever you want, as long as it's going to get the job done, will actually help you quite a lot. The second wave isn't really that bad. I mean, it looks bad because it's the same ghosts that you fight with Alize's sort of events, and these look bad until you realise that because you're hitting so hard with characters like Cecil, Rosa, Zack, Apocalypse will break through any shields that they have. Cecil will make it through his Holy Resist down, his Holy Imperil, that he'll be able to hit really hard, and because there's always 2 enemies, you're still getting the splash damage from sort of Paladin Force or Luminous Blast or Holy Flame or Apocalypse or Luminous Arrow, but it's not a necessity. It's really just handy to have. So if you want to focus one of them down at a time, you can do that because they don't boost each other when one of the other ones falls over. So you don't have to worry too much about that either. So basically, just keeping your party up whilst dealing damage sort of at a consistent rate will be enough for you to get through this event. I actually chose to use Cecil's Holy Enchant and the 3rd wave as well, so that basically the Elemental Behemoth didn't cause too many problems, because the Ultima weapon actually isn't that big of a problem. I decided to take Leviathan with me as my summon to mitigate the speed up that they get from the event itself. I thought that it would actually be quite a useful method for me to do that. I mean, one thing I did during, sort of leading up to this event was actually bring Sephiroth and Leviathan so that their speed wasn't increased, it was actually decreased by having the combination of those 2 speed down auras at all times. So he's an option that you could bring along with you. And there's plenty of other characters that would work well for this. Like I said, if you've picked up Vayne this week, he'll do really well, but honestly, having an Enchant and Imperialer, I think is a massive benefit to this particular fight. So if you have Lulu, or Aiko, or Cecil, or Onion Knight, or Yuri, anyone that has Imperil, particularly if they can enchant as well. So the main 3 that I'll mention would be Cecil, Onion Knight, and Lulu. Then they're going to do really well. Papalymo will also bring a really nice consistent amount of damage as well, though he's primarily single target, and you'll probably want to bring somebody who has some sort of Brave Overflow to make sure that he's not capping every 5 seconds, because that's Papalymo's main issue. You want to bring someone with him that makes sure he's getting the most out of his really powerful attacks. I think that having a battery of some description makes it so that their defenses or their resistances aren't quite such a big deal. So part of the reason I brought Rosa is so that I could benefit from her batterying, and then Cecil for the same reason. But anyone with a battery and a decent support, I actually think Aiko would be pretty good for this because she has Imperil and Holy attacks. So if you've got Aiko and Yuri, that would be a really strong shout. Edge and Kryl for the Thunder Imperil and Enchant respectively would work really well because both of them have Thunder attacks and they just go off, and you can keep your bravery up at all times as well. The 2nd and 1st wave do tend to use HP attacks quite frequently, so if you can use Edge to get around that, then they'll work really well as well, and we all know how much I like Edge and Kryl, so that's definitely a party composition you might want to consider. And then, just like I said, just having a harsh damage dealer, somebody like Sephiroth, somebody like Zack. The reason I took Zack is because the reason I picked the party composition I picked is because while all of them are primarily used for defensive purposes, they can all hit like trucks too. Rosa less so, but because of the auras from herself and Cecil and the enchantment, she's still going to hit really hard. Like, I use her HP attack plus quite a lot in this fight, and it actually hits really hard. It hits enough to break things. So as long as you've got decent things to mitigate the various buffs that the enemies have going into the fight, then you shouldn't feel that this is too much of an issue for you. The last thing that I will mention, and I will mention this as a relation to the video more than the strategy behind the event itself, is that a lot of these fights do take a very, very long time, so I try my hardest to kind of constrict the videos as to being at a half decent speed so that we can, very quickly move on to the next Chaos event. But sometimes there's going to be more to the event than I can sort of speak over, so that, occasionally there will be small segments of the video where I'm not speaking and where the video itself will take sort of precedence over everything else. So do forgive me if that's the case and it bothers you in any way, but it's something that makes the video much, much easier for me to make. So thank you very much for your patience with that, and then hopefully we'll have a look at Vayne's Lost Chapter straight after. And now, talking about Vayne's Lost Chapter, honestly, this is a perfect example of what I meant with the video, because the strategy for this fight is actually very, very simple, but it's a heck of an HP sponge. This enemy, the Kirin, has so much health, it's infuriating. But for this particular event, I took Vayne, because we all know how much I like Vayne and how powerful he is, alongside Paladin Cecil again and Y'shtola. And I thought this team worked absolutely fantastically. So for the first couple of waves, honestly, because there's multiple enemies, like the worm isn't too big of a deal as long as you can get like a good hit in to begin with. If you can like make sure that Vayne's set up with all his auras, Y'shtola and Cecil will keep you covered. Even Y'shtola on her own would keep you covered in terms of health gain, and it's really annoying. And no one likes fighting the worms because of their stupid HP AoE attacks that are just extremely vexing. But Y'shtola will keep you more than covered for that. So you don't have to worry too much. You just use the skills periodically, because you've got Cecil with such longevity with his HP and Bravery plus, and then Y'shtola and Vayne can both recover uses of their skills very easily. You don't have to be quite so stingy with your uses of their skills. Obviously with Vayne in particular, you want to be a little more careful about how you go about it, but because you don't want to run out of Force of Will too quickly. But with Y'shtola, you can use Stone quite liberally. Her HP plus is amazing. Vayne, when he's got his sort of like three turns for free, you want to kind of use a Force of Will somewhere in there. I tend to go either Force of Will or Pummel, then the other one, and then Mac Wave, so that I'm back at three stacks more quickly. So I'm not forced to use Mac Wave on the next turn. I can use Pummel, and I can still be at 3 stacks. But you can do it in whichever order you want. You basically just want to make sure that you're rounding yourself out at 3 stacks, and you're only ever using the EX attack Joesephyr when you're not at 3 stacks, or when it's not its plus version, because it instantly puts you back at 3 stacks, so you've got 3 turns again for the following turn. So your ideal rotation is actually Force of Will, Pummel or Mac Wave, and then Tree of Saphira to put yourself straight back into having those 3 turns again. And honestly, the re-break on Tree of Saphira, I actually forgot about it once or twice, and I was like, oh no, I have to rethink my turn, because the enemy's going to go next and he's going to hit someone, he's going to break it. And I completely forgot that Tree of Saphira now re-breaks things. It's dumb. It's just so dumb. Like, you can easily bring more delay to this. Like, I considered bringing Lael to this, and it would have been fine. Like, you know, anyone with Aranea will absolutely make mincemeat out of this thing. Just bear in mind quite how long it takes to whittle this thing's health down, because it's got a lot of health and it's painful. But like I said, bringing the auras, bringing the batteries, bringing the Holy Enchant in Peril from Paladin Cecil was actually really helpful as well, because it made all of Vayne's attacks that much stronger. So I really appreciated having him in the fight, and just by having constant access to all of his really powerful attacks, especially during the second wave with the Humbarbers, having the splash damage from his stuff was really helpful. Having the ability to heal was relatively helpful, just to make sure that I never dropped below a certain point. Honestly, the reason I enjoy Paladin Cecil as much as I do is because it's so easy to slot him into practically any team, because you can, while he doesn't excel at any one thing, he is above average easily on practically every aspect in the game. He has Enchant in Peril, he has batteries, he has healing, he has he has a multi-hitting fast-charging EX move. That was difficult to say. He's got a Brave and HP plus to die for. He's just solid in every aspect, and I plan to use him for Dimensions N9, so I don't regret purpling him, not even for a second. Before talking about alternate characters, I actually want to touch on the fact that I used Leviathan again for this fight. I've actually been really enjoying Leviathan recently, purely because the speed down aura effect from him, in combination with either delay characters or launch characters or free turn characters or anyone with any kind of turn manipulation, I've actually found to be very valuable over the past couple of weeks. So I've been using Leviathan for quite a lot of fights, but there's no reason why you could... There's loads of characters or different summons you could use for this. There's nothing imperative about Leviathan, I just really enjoy using it, so feel free to change this to Shiva or Ifrit or Brothers or Pandemonium if you're using Lael and Tifa, things like that. But honestly, the best thing I can think to suggest when it comes to other characters is just to bring as much turn manipulation as physically possible. The Kirin got a few turns on me, but it didn't do anything particularly dangerous during those turns, and therefore I couldn't tell you too much about exactly what attacks that he was planning to use, because he never got to use them. I used Vayne and Y'shtola as my kind of delay batteries of sorts, so I also brought an Aranea friend unit, because quite honestly, why wouldn't you at this point? I might not have used Aranea in the fight from my own team, but I mean, there's not much better than an Aranea friend unit when you're against a single boss. It just wrecks things. This boss like practically never got turns. So if you've got Aranea or Lael or Tifa or Y'shtola or Vayne, anyone with delay or break mechanics, possibly not Quistis because she's still a little bit too weak. We've now kind of got to wait for her realization for her to be good. But there are so many characters with these re-break mechanics, with these delay mechanics, with all this turn manipulation. This fight is designed for that. You have to remember that this is Vayne's Lost Chapter. It's meant to be built around Vayne's mechanics. And Vayne very much likes taking people's turns away by just smacking them over the head over and over and over again. I actually think that the comparison between Vayne and Aranea is slightly unfair. I think that people should be comparing Vayne more to Artemisia, because he's like a single target focused version of her, where he gives himself all these free turns and he uses those turns to make it so that the enemy doesn't get theirs. So he works slightly differently from Artemisia in a more Aranea-like fashion, if you will. But there's literally no reason why you can't bring her to this fight. None at all. And Aiko, I actually think, would be a really solid choice for this in terms of support, because she can extend Vayne's buffs by an extra turn, meaning that he's gonna get more turns straight after he's used Joesephyr. After Joesephyr, if Aiko goes, she can then extend the buffs on Vayne for an extra turn, meaning he gets another free turn. So then you could just go skill, 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 EX. And then you just go all over again. And it's just, you can do some really nasty things with any kind of buff extensions and Vayne. So that's something that you might want to bear in mind. Honestly, I'm gonna recommend using Vayne for this fight because it's his fight. The banner that he's on, I think, is phenomenal if you don't already have Vayne. And if you don't, then you should replace him. If you can't replace Vayne for a character that has delay or re-break mechanics like Vayne does, you should be pulling on his banner to get him. Because it's such a good mechanic. It works so well in trying to stop your opponent from getting a turn. It will work for so many Chaos events So yes, I can recommend you run other characters. So yes, Lulu could work in place of Paladin Cecil for the, in Enchant in Peril, although the enemy is weak to Holy already, as I discovered from my stream chat while I was doing the Chaos. So I was sitting there going, oh no, I can't do anything Holy because I haven't got the Resistor. Doesn't matter, it's weak to Holy. Bring Aiko with you. Bring Yuri with you. Bring anything like that with you. But honestly, if you can't build a team that has somebody with a Rebreak or something on it, the banner that this Chaos belongs to is the one that you should be pulling on pretty heavily. So that's going to be all for today's Chaos Roundup for this week. I hope that you guys have enjoyed watching my Chaos clears, and I hope that I've given you guys a bit of advice on the fights themselves, as well as hopefully shone a bit of a spotlight on my Paladin Cecil, because I love my baby right now. I mean, like, Vayne is one of my favourite characters, but I've been totally pushing him to the wayside in favour of Cecil, and I don't even know why. But honestly, Vayne is an absolutely extraordinary character, and I hope that I've shown the reason why. And I've done a clear that has no... One thing I found interesting is I've done plenty of clears without Aranea. I've used Y'shtola in practically every fight, or like every video that I've done with Chaos Roundup at least has one fight with Y'shtola in it. Pretty much every week. So, honestly, people sit there and say, oh, you're using Aranea, bleh. And then I'm like, yeah, but I've used Y'shtola just as much, if not more, and no one complains about her. So that may be a character that if you don't own her in the EX shop that you should definitely consider picking up. So honestly, there are so many characters available to you right now. With the clear I did for Vayne's Lost Chapter, having Paladin Cecil, Vayne and Y'shtola all are available to everyone right now because the banner is live and the EX shop is live to get Y'shtola's stuff. Then perhaps it's a team that you could consider building for yourself. Anyways, as I say, that's going to be it from me. Thank you very much for joining me today. And as I said before, don't forget to check out all of my social media links and Twitch in particular, because I love hanging out with you guys. It's been really good fun these past couple of weeks, despite everything that's going on in the world. And of course, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on that bell for notifications. So thanks very much again, guys. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.